Mango's Caribbean Restaurant. Authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavill, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy, you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles, and I'm Tab.
Welcome to episode 84 of the Inside HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, a show that covering the sporting HBCU i.e. all things HBCU sports. For institutions large and small, from NAIA to NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I am your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, along with my co-host Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our KSWH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. This is Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency LLC. THG Agency is the company that provides sporting and educational consultants and data analytics. I see Charles Bishop all dressed up. I did my homage, but I thought I was just doing a little something, but he made sure that we know what's going on. So I think something's going to tell me, but this is going to be a Jackson State University themed show. We'll see how it goes and see if we can get outside of that lane, but I'm not too sure what that means, because there's some breaking news that everybody wants us to discuss. We will get into detail for it. We will have to give you a little update, breaking news in regards to we were going to have Vice President and Director of Athletics Ashley Robinson on the show today. He promised to get back with us. He had a special assignment call. He got sponsors that are trying to get on the meal ticket there, and I certainly can understand it. He's got to pay that bill in terms of prime time and all of them assistant coaches that are supposed to be coming along. So I said, Ashley, I understand, but you promised me this. If you come back, we'll give you space, but you're going to have to bring a nice little gift with us. You can decide what that is. But so he promised he'd do something special. You understand?
Mm.
With that being said, I'm going to go to Mike as he's on a resort beach somewhere. I told you Mike is the traveler of us all, and he finds a way literally to travel the world. He's one of the few people that has the ability to negotiate COVID-19 pandemic. You know, he's still masking up, he's still being safe, but his business puts him in a position that he has to travel. So look at the background, and this is the only person I understand that gets to travel in style. You know, somehow he's like on the Destin Beach in Florida somehow. He acts like he's with the SEC in terms of their regional meetings. And even they not even going to play. But he finds his way there. So I told you the SWAC is going places. HBCUs are going places, and Mike is evident as he's traveling and making things happen. With that, Mike, get us into some HBCU news of the day.
Well, first, let me say good afternoon, good evening, Doc and CB. Great evening. My heart goes out to the folks in Houston, Texas, through all of the flooding that we're going through. This is almost 3 years to date from Hurricane Harvey. So with the slow torrential downpour, I implore everybody to be careful. As Doc alluded to, unfortunately, my work allows me to mix work as I see Doc messing with his cap. You trying to send subliminal messages?
It's kind of hard wearing this JSU cap with all this going on. But I'm trying to be a team player. I put on my red shirt. I was gonna put on the jacket with Ashley. Ashley come in, so I threw away the jacket. If we ain't careful, I'm gonna throw away the cap too. But I got love for Charles.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
I got love for Charles too. So tremendous day. But let's start high level. JERICHO, the famed back from North Carolina A&T, has signed a 3-year contract extension with the Chicago Bears. Now, Tariq came into the league, didn't think, with a thought that, he may not make it 5 years. And here it is, according to NFL scouts, according to Yahoo, the agreement could be worth $18.25 million, and according to league sources, includes more than $9.5 million in guaranteed money. Congratulations to this young man for the 3-year extension. Let me give Onadon, let me give the Twitter world and all of the sources credit because it's fairly consistent. But this was the final year of his contract. But now he gets longer-term security in Chicago, a 4th-round pick from North Carolina A&T. Congratulations to the Aggie family. He was invited to the Pro Bowl and named All-Pro in his 2nd year. As a punt return specialist, he averaged 12.5 yards that season and led the NFL with 411 yards, return yards. So Cohen also enjoyed the best offensive player in 2018, leading the Bears with 725 receiving yards, 71 catches, totaling 1,168 total all-purpose yards. So congratulations to Kareem Cohen. I stress a lot because he's a little man, and like the little man, we got to represent for the little man. So congratulations to Tariq Cohen and the North Carolina A&T family on this tremendous occasion. One more for the celebration.
Very much so.
I can't even keep a straight face. I can't keep a straight face.
Before we go to Charles, because I think he got something on his mind. Before we go to Charles, I'm going to give a shout out to some people. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to But there are some other HBCU news in the world. I know it may not seem like it for many people.
No. Have at it.
But we got Franklin Nelson swimming in Houston, as he's talking about. As Mike appropriately said, prayers out to everybody in Houston. Our families and all those that are dealing with that. Certainly want to keep everybody in mind and in prayer. Michael Lee, what's up, guys? Hurry up before my Lakers start, man. I want the Sanders to be successful bad. almost want him to beat us, but nothing changes. We're still their daddy. And we're gonna be hot and heavy on the comment section today because we want to get people's opinions, people's thoughts in. So we're gonna do that back and forth. We'll have some serious talk and analysis that you can't get anywhere else. But we want to make this fan inclusive. You know, we decided we were gonna do Ashley, that moved around, and we're gonna do this instead. In regards, we're gonna go heavy with the comment sections and get people's thoughts in amongst our thoughts as it goes. So Chuck Hunt, congratulations to your alma mater. Charles Bishop, you made a huge selection, great marking. Varick Williams said, what's up? Ashley Robinson boosted his resume as Jackson State's athletic director with a huge hire. Lonnie Shaw, this is North Carolina A&T Southern folks. So
hey, Lonnie.
Grambling folks here. Yep. He says the show is prime time. Yes, indeed. We have Diane Weber. Happy belated birthday to one of my favorite Southernites, Varick Williams. Yes, happy birthday. Certainly. HBCU, happy birthday to you. Nick Brown. We have Associate Commissioner checking us out. Jason Cable, seeing what's going on. He's been checking us out lately, giving us a lot of love straight from the SWAC office, doing tremendous work. And that's Dr. Jason Cable, for those who don't know. You know, as I'm working on that plug, you know, we're seriously trying to do the next step for executive doctorate certificate of HBCU sports studies, athletic leadership, if you would, in terms of athletic administration, athletic sports leadership, and sports studies. So looking to see if we can coach him out to possibly being a adjunct professor for that. We'll see how that works. So keep your head. You know, we're going to change the game on this side as well. Jalen Riley, Yvonne McIntosh Maxwell, Raymond Smith, Douglas Wesley. Jimmy Wilson said, good afternoon, family. Yes, indeed. This is a family atmosphere. Ron Kennedy, Richard Scott, Adele Benders, George Anthony, Robert Neal, G. Boom Holly in here, Lillette Johnson, giving us some love in here. So we'll call out some names throughout the show. So keep the comments going. If I don't catch it, you can repost them because it keeps going the feed, but we'll get it in throughout the show with that. Charles Bishop, what's some HBCU news you had?
Sure. Let's take a look, and this comes to us from HBCU Sports. Ken Rashad, 7 former HBCU standouts among the candidates named for the 2021 NFL Hall of Fame class. The 7 candidates, they represent Alcorn, Jackson State, Bethune-Cookman, and Livingstone. And those guys are, of the list of 130 nominees, the 7 HBCU graduates: Steve Air 2 McNair from Alcorn State, Albert Lewis from Grambling State, Donald Driver from Alcorn State, Jimmy Smith from Jackson State University, Ben Coates from Livingstone, Nick Collins from Bethune-Cookman, and Eric Williams from Central State. So, those 7 Hall of Famers, 7 guys included on a Hall of Fame list. So, I want to give those guys a shout out.
I'm surprised he didn't start out with Smith, Jimmy Smith, and Ian with Jimmy Smith.
Exactly.
Did I say Jimmy Smith from Jackson? Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc, I was being a total professional. So.
Yes, you are. Good job, Mike.
We gonna eat this. You gonna eat this up
before we go with Charles? Any other additional HBCU news that you want to share with us?
Absolutely. The City of Tallahassee and Leon County Commissioners voted to approve the FAMU Stadium upgrade request, $10 million. So this is a transformational monument for our program, university, and most importantly, our community. That's from the Vice President Director of Athletics, Courtney Gaucher, 06, by the way. Bragg Memorial Stadium is more than a stadium. It's a community asset and a historic anchor for the community, and all of the right words, but it's about time for Bragg Stadium to be upgraded. You look at FAMU coming into the SWAC. You look at where the SWAC is headed. You look at the star of the SWAC. You got to upgrade. You got to improve your facility.
You do.
So here
it
is, $10 million.
Way to go, fam. Way to go.
Hey,
it is so appropriate
Jackson
because I think I heard you say this, Mike, in a lot of ways, and it's so true. those recruiting wars for various reasons between the state of Mississippi and Jackson State University and the state of Florida and Florida A&M
Yep.
are going to be something else in all seriousness, because those
Absolutely.
coaches and fans move around that area, obviously. But you literally have the head coach, Willie Simmons, at Florida A&M, that came out of Mississippi in terms of being the offensive coordinator at Alcorn State. Obviously, you got Coach Prime, as he likes to be referred to, as the head coach now of Jackson State University. He comes out of Florida, right there out of Tallahassee, and enough. And all those crossing connections between those coaches wanting to get a bit of that talent in each of the areas is going to be fascinating. We already seen some shots fired as Coach Prime in regards coming out, and literally on his first day, he made offer to a lot of these JUCO colleges. You came back and you saw Willie Simmons today in regards to fired back in regards to one of the coaches that was said to be there, potentially on that list. And while they were joking in this, you can see there's going to be some good banner that he came back, and the wide receiver, Ocho Cinco, as a lot of people call it, he talking about, the only coaching position he would take, he said, would be on the seven highest hills, as they say over there in FAMU, Tallahassee. So I thought that was nice. Then he had a nice little flavor when people were going out with these memes talking about Coach Prime and all that, and they had Simmons in the mix talking about Neon, and all this, and you seen these out here. He came back and said, "Now let me stop you. I ain't say that." He said, "Well, that wasn't me. I need to clear this up." And so this is going to be intriguing, all seriousness, in terms of the battle between those. Obviously, Alabama schools, Alabama State and Alabama A&M, are going to find their way in the mix. But I think it's going to be interesting, especially when you have the circumstances where next year, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but in 2021, to kick off things when FAMU becomes an official member of the SWAC, one of the big games for that first weekend in terms of Labor Day is going to be in Greater Miami. That's Sunday in regards to the Orange Blossom Classic kicking back off, and it will feature none other than Jackson State University, now we know, led by Coach Prime, as well as Willie Simmons leading the Rattlers of FAMU. Boy, you talking about a matchup made in heaven. Television eyes, if they can't understand why they would want that, I don't understand. As many people have alluded to, courtesy of Steve Gaither, the great work he's doing over there at HBCU Game Day, shout out to him. In his tweet, he said, man, Dr. Charles McCullin, as a commissioner, he's talking about, while everybody having some concerns with 2020, he's having a really great one. He's talking about picked up FAMU, picked up Bethune-Cookman, the first one out there with a spring schedule and making the move, and got all the news for that. Esports out there. And then you talk about under the umbrella of SWAC is none other than Jackson State and Coach Prime. Before we get in that detail, I gave some shout-outs for those folks. I did want to make one mention that Jimmy Wilson talked about it in terms of the potential Hall of Famers. He talked about they still left Otis Taylor out there, Prairie View A&M University. I think that is a great mission that they did. Obviously, he was sick, and I thought it was unfortunate he didn't get in before he's sick. And now I think because of his sickness, now that's part of the excuse. And I think he will get in, but now they want to wait until he's posthumous so his family can take advantage of it, because they know he literally couldn't make it. So to the event, which is sad in a lot of ways, they probably should still do it, but so is life with that. As I pass it back to you, Charles, we did all the song and dance. Do you have some other news out there that you want to discuss and get out in the marketplace in terms of Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab?
Well, Charles, what is your news?
I think there was one little small detail that happened on yesterday. Let me see, can I look it up, because it was so minute. But it looks like Coach Prime has hit Jackson, Mississippi. Coach Deion Sanders is now the head coach of the Jackson State University Football Tigers. Yeah.
Yes.
Prime time.
prime time.
Before we get into this great dialogue and obviously and dissect this inside and out, let me go back and give some shout out to some of these folks that joined us. You got Drew, AD Drew. He'll be on the show a little later. That's AD Drew. If you talk about AD, Brian and AD of sports rapping, he'll join us near the top half part of the show to give some special his analysis. We'll be doing a show that will debut on Thursday. We'll join Brian and AD for sports rap, and we'll come over there and dissect and chop it all up, and you'll be able to see that Thursday. So check it out as we get in the lab some more and mix up this big lab tomorrow, but you'll see it on Thursday. So let us do our thing and let us do the work. With that, Keith Benton, yes sir, he's in the house. He covers SWAC sports a lot, and HBCU sports, doing some great work out there. Roderick Morris Sr., George Atterbury. Moss is out here, Bartholomew. Jimmy Wilson said, but hey, are they still leaving Otis State out? I gave you that information. Donald Jean, yes, they are. Chuck Hunt says, I was moving to see Dion in Houston, hugging at press conferences in Jackson, Mississippi. They had a lot going on. He's talking about the legendary W.C. Gordon. He was amazing in terms of what was going on there. Lawrence McCall. I'm in here representing PVAMU. Yes, sir. McCall getting in there. The chief, as we like to call him down there, Lawrence D. White, Jeffrey Rumlin, checking us out. Previous president, post-president Byron Gaudier, that's brother Gaudier, over there, big-time rattler, so he's in there getting his news. It looks like he probably one of those folks talking about, I got my eyes on you, Jackson State. I got my eyes on you.
No doubt.
Getting this in here, checking this out. Lawrence D. White, as I said, Kevin Harrison, Charles Spinks, LaVonda Walker, Jackie King. Giving a shout out to a lot of these folks, as I said. Get your comments, keep your comments. Make sure you forward, send us out. We appreciate all the love, and we're going to give you a lot of great information. Thomas White of Mogul Threads has joined us back today, talking about what up, fella. Ricky Burton showing us a lot of love. So just saying, getting in there. We'll mix it up, give you texts and all those back and forth. So we like to interact, so we want to talk about that. But what I wanted to ask you as we go back to you, Charles, in all seriousness, you took the opportunity as a media person and as a booster in a lot of ways to get in there and be in the house. So you get to tell us from literally, as we say, in terms of the front lines, right, of this atmosphere. If you would take a couple of minutes and talk about first, as you are getting on your plane and you're soaking all this in, it's like, man, what is this going to be about? You have your emotions in terms of your concerns about the hire, the excitement about such a big name. What is this going to do? If you will take us down that for a couple of minutes, then we'll dissect that and we'll go from there.
Sure thing. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is when you kind of start hearing the rumors. You kind of laugh at it, like, come on, all right. And then there was kind of a slow build to know, the rumors kind of kept going on and things of that nature. And then when it finally came to fruition, it was very surreal. And you stop and kind of think about the history of Jackson State football and all the legends, the 4 Hall of Famers, the culture around Jackson State football, where as a child I grew up in it. For a 7:30 game, you show up at the stadium at 2 and tailgate until the gates open, and it was just a beautiful atmosphere to grow up in, and you were treated to a victory for the most part during the 1980s and 90s, and it was just still surreal to get a person the caliber of Coach Prime, of Deion Sanders. There are no guarantees about how things would look with Coach Prime as Jackson State's head coach, but to just have that moment, especially after you've kind of dealt with a downturn in Jackson State football for the past 7 years, that a lot of us are just not used to the downturn that Jackson State has gone through. And to get someone like this, it was just really surreal. And then his press conference, when I say the tone He set the tone. And he sort of challenged us, not just as Jackson State fans, but as HBCU fans. You know, why not? Why would I not want to come to this university with all this tradition, with this fan base that's led FCS in attendance? You know, 30,000, you know, is great, but why not have 60,000? You know, and it was sort of a clarion call, if you will, to for HBCU fans, not just Jackson State fans, to think even bigger, to think even broader. And, you know, as he started his press conference, Dr. Cavill, you know, he choked up a little bit. And I kind of looked around, and there was some people dabbing their eyes with it as well, because I think kind of the emotion of it all, it washed over us. And then, you know, we got a sermon in terms of the blueprint that he has for Jackson State. And it was an amazing sort of atmosphere.
So yeah, I'll jump in there on this point. There was no doubt about it that Deion, and obviously we understood his religious connection, particularly of late when he talked about him finding his Lord and Savior from that framework. And you can see in a lot of ways this is a ministry. You know, people may question whatever, but I certainly know for a fact when I heard it, that's what resonated with me. I was like, he's taking these people to church. And just to tell you about it, I forgot for about this long now, don't get it twisted, about this long, I was a fan. I was like, you know, I don't even play football, and I was ready to put on the helmet. I certainly was ready to write a check. And I know Ashley's going to find a way to see this and ask me for my money, but I know, Ashley, I'll come back to
you know it's coming.
I was just saying for that second it worked. And I'm sure it's going to work for the rest of Jack State. So Jack State don't need no more money. They got they got Prime. They got all the money they need. They got to write some checks. Right? You're going to do all that. But on all seriousness, I really thought he resonated with what is a rich part of the history and culture in the African American community, which means it's part of the HBCUs. Not saying that everybody is in that framework, but there's a large percentage of folks at some point in their life, whether they still connected here or not, and many of them still are, that connection piece resonates with people. And his energy in talking about this believe is the center point in regards to this transformational approach that he is after and that could take place, and so many people are fascinated by, that he honed in on that. I thought that was fascinating to see that. So credit for you picking that up. And so I wanted to go to Mike and talk to Mike and say, what were your thoughts in regards to what took place, specifically just about him being there in that space? We can go into some breakdowns of, you know, being critical in regards in that in a moment, as we have some guests join us. But I'm just talking about the atmosphere at that point. Let's dive into that moment. Sometimes in life, we had this need to speed through everything. We're already talking about how this will and won't work and what's next, who are the coaches. But let's talk about this moment, because to me, this is significant, right?
Yeah.
When I break this down from a very methodological framework, right, from a sporting context and business framing, I could not find a way where I could put this together in one piece. And the reason is because times have changed. We have social media that is a part of this now, right? And if you really think about this, as we grew up, one of the biggest people, particularly in a sporting context, that started to transform outside of that box at that time were just a couple of people. And two of them that have been able to adhere, if you would, were Michael Jordan and Deion Sanders. And let me take you back for a part of that historical framing as I get back to you, Mike, and break this down for me. Is people may have forgotten during that period, prime time, when he came and left Atlanta as he's building that arc of his career, had won that Super Bowl in San Francisco, ultimately signed with Dallas Cowboys. Many people talk about America's team, regardless if that's the definition you want to use. We know that that is an iconic brand. It is certainly one of the richest brands all over the world in terms of professional team. So you have this huge, iconic individual signing with this major franchise. And the way they did the signing, if people forget, if I can take you back, that was Nike that signed on also with Dallas. It was so against the grain for Jerry Jones, and I still have some issues with Jerry Jones today, but I'm talking about purely in terms of business and marketing, the genius that it was. He actually, the NFL had to change the rules and say that you couldn't do that in terms of how it was going to give some teams advantage. So he leveraged the deal with Nike to be able to sign Deion Sanders to the richest contract at that time for any professional player. Right? Think about that. Deion was literally selling more shoes for Nike than Michael Jordan at that time.
Michael Jordan, yes. Absolutely.
Let me pause and let that resonate with you, because I'm gonna take you to school on this, because y'all talk about, you're in the lab and mixing. You want to get some stuff that you don't get anywhere else. I'm going to break this down in regards to the context, and we can discuss. We can have some fun, but at the end of the day, a lot of y'all join the show because we break down the business context of sports and what you are seeing and why this is special and why it's so different. Whether you're going to root against Jackson State in terms of what they do on the field, you have to understand from an HBCU brand awareness context what this means contextually and how this, to some degree, will benefit your program, the SWAC, and HBCUs in general. Because you have cut a paradigm in terms of the tipping point that we will see regardless of how this works out, especially if it does work out. With that saying, you had these two iconic, and they took two different paths. Primetime was outspoken. Whether you agreed with all the context of what he said, he was very outspoken in terms of his opinion. Now, while Michael Jordan was having his success on the field, and he was very monstrous in terms of what we found to come out with his players, outside of that, he was very non-committal on being outspoken and really showing his mindset in terms of what that meant. And he was able to stratify where he went in the marketing context from a global icon with the help of basketball and what he did with basketball. You have the explosion of NFL in terms of what is going on with the explosion of the television market, right? Now, both these individuals go in different paths, have the success, the monetary. Jordan is able to buy a franchise with this. Deion Sanders goes on the networks, right? ESPN and an NFL network in terms of continuing to keep his brand out in the marketplace. He's leveraging that at the same time where he's connecting with these young folks as he's a coach for these all-star games, right? Working with the youth, developing his ministry, right? He's now you have this metaphoric, if you would, framework of the social media platforms, and he's engaging more so than Michael Jordan, right? And so now he's at the center of this space. And so you have one of the biggest icons out there. Shout out to Michael Strahan, because he should be a part of this conversation. But this is different because in a sporting context, he may not be as high in regards to Michael Jordan or Deion Sanders. But if you think about his appeal to a broader market in terms of Good Morning America, and what that means, that's somebody that you have to keep your eyes on. And he is an HBCU representative in terms of Texas Southern University, another Hall of Famer, NFL, right? Just to give you this broader context of what goes on. And then this morning you have Deion Sanders connect with this HBCU legend in Good Morning America, and they have this jostling effect, right? You have Shannon Sharp a couple of days speak about this indefinitely 2 times. A Hall of Famer, right? From Savannah State, another HBCU legend and icon, right? That also has his media spear out there in context. I need you all to really understand the magnitude of it. And then Primetime in his speech specifically talked about working with his athletic peers, whether they're directly in terms of those that will join him, 84 years in a coaching context, NFL playing and coaching, and we'll see what that means. Some people are having good time and fun and banter about these names and throwing out there. But if you look at this seriously in the context for a minute, what if these are some people that actually have coached at the college level and decide to buy into this, believe in saying this is a transformational moment that I can literally be in a place to change the dynamics that I couldn't control, where I can't go higher. If I can control the context here, I can show these next level of players of how to redefine their brand space and brand identification in such a way that they have more control. We see this with LeBron James and his son and open up saying, yeah, this is good about HBCUs. We can make this connection. You see these players now talking about changing the brand identification and putting them in their top 5. You see Maker Market with Howard University, right? We see the leading lady seeking the presidential position with Biden in terms of vice president, HBCU alumni, Howard University. You see these ladies, the twins from Houston, right, committed to Texas A&M, decommitting and going to Howard. And we can go on, but you have to be careful because the rest of the world will try to compartmentalize this and not allow you to understand the magnitude of the cultural empowerment that is taking place in front of your eyes right now. And you can either get on board and understand what this means about moving what you say you all want, or will you laugh this down and tear it up from asunder from inside because of your greed and hate and not understanding what the powers of be and how all tides lift the boat.
Absolutely.
So contextually, I need you to understand from a sporting, professional perspective, like in the classroom, from a lecture lab perspective of what is going on in your eyes that you may not even realize because your eyes are wide shut because you can't get past your unbelievable state of nature. So I needed to do that before I go to you, Mike, and talk about your context of where you come from a business analytical perspective of you being in corporate settings, of understanding and seeing this behind the face. Many of our listeners are in those same fields, but they fail to cut over of what they practice on the corporate side and how you translate that into the sporting context, specifically at college and athletics, HBCUs, as we call them, SWAC, and now in this particular moment, Jackson State University.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Doc. And it's tough to put into this moment what this means. And I know that CB, you and Doc were tremendously closer to this than I am. But what I see from a business and more so from a cultural context is you got to understand, look at this moment and then look at history. Everywhere Deion Sanders has gone, he has what you call organizational cultural transformation. Think about it. When he first went to the Atlanta Falcons, they were playing in a dirt field in Fulton County Stadium. You really did not know about the Dirty Birds until Deion Sanders got there. He rebranded a whole team, and then they had a whole stadium. He often chides and jokes about the Atlanta Dome, that was the stadium he built. Literally, that was really the stadium he built, because the only name you heard of in Atlanta Falcon history was maybe William Fuller and Steve Barkowski. And then here comes
William
Deion,
Andrews.
and now you have I'm sorry, Andrews. And then now you have Prime Time. He literally transformed or brought his culture to that organization. Fast forward. Look at what he did for the San Francisco 49ers. Blue collar team. Everybody wore suits, button up. Deion comes there for a couple of seasons, and all of a sudden, this organizational transfer, they're strutting around. They walk with a strut. They have a certain zing to it. He brings his culture to that organization. And you could say the same thing for the Cowboys. And look at what he did for the Atlanta Falcons. The other piece I want to say is that you got to understand, Deion Sanders was a cornerback. And probably outside of a few, and I've heard a couple of people allude to this, very few people outside of the position of quarterback have had that kind of brand value. And here is a cornerback who played baseball and football, who was able to create a brand for himself that transcends football, goes into baseball, goes into the broadcasting booth, and that brand in itself continue to grow and grow and grow. You got to tip your hat to that person that can command that kind of brand recognition. And then all of a sudden, 180, he decides, I want to coach, but I want to coach at an HBCU. Now, you had the Twitter haters out there over the last 24 hours, and I know you've seen them. But think of this. He chose an iconic HBCU in Jackson State. One of it leads the FCS in attendance. One of the best bands, and yes, CB, I'm selling. One of the best bands in the HBCU draft. So I will admit to it this time. And all of a sudden, he comes here, and imagine what he can do for that. But people know Dion the athlete. People know Dion the personality. People know Dion the spiritual Dion. But you saw today, or in his speech, you saw basically, I think Doc coined it best. You saw that this was more of a spiritual passion for him. This was more his ministry. And I have no doubt that he will bring change. Yes, you're going to ask, can he handle the X's and O's? Can he do all of that stuff? But just the brevity of this moment, knowing his past, knowing his brand capability, and I wish there was an economist to put the numbers on what he did economically and organizationally for the Falcons, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Braves, and other organizations. There's a way to economically do that. But just think in the context of what he will be able to do for Jackson State, and in this moment, what it means, not only economically, but spiritually. You can't talk enough about this. So,
thank you. We'll take a quick break, and we'll bring it back, give y'all something to ponder on when we come back. We'll add in A.D. Drew, co-host of the BCSN Sports Wrap, and we'll get some contextuality of some of the things that we've been talking about and give him a chance to talk about his thoughts in our context of what's going on here. As we go to this commercial break, I want you to think about this. We can take for a minute, LeBron James left Cleveland, right? The franchise, and went to Miami. When he left, they recorded the dip of the value of the franchise was $500 million. When he left Miami to go back, it was $500 million. Now that is today's number, but that gives you some context of the value brand of a top player like Dion. So I want you all to understand the economic value of what's taken on here. You all are down to these X's and O's, and we'll come back with Drew, and we'll talk about that a little more, because I'm going to tell you something about when you have somebody at that level and the expertise of what they build and how they build that brand. This is no dummy. And they take things seriously. So these individuals do not go into things half-heartedly without seriously about their craft, because one of the things that drive them crazy is they perfectionists. You don't have the brilliance of folks because they just happenstance on it. These are perfectionists that work at their craft to most of us will make us nauseum. Because most of us don't have it in it. That's why we don't get to that greatness. I just want to be frank with you. You know, it's no disrespect, but it is what it is. So this is Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, coming on back with A.D. Drew. So give us a quick break, and we'll come back right after these messages to close up the show and give you a little more as we entertain you with some different perspectives on HBCU Sports Lab. You know, we're in the lab talking to you about what's going on with Dion. As they say around those parts, Coach Prime, taking the head football coach at Jackson State University in the prime part time. Of the HBCU prime time culture, as I like to say it. Prime time. Take it away. Prime time.
This is Brian Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBNOnline, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the JERICHO Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavill, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon'
This is Dr. Cavill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, giving you dialogue right now. We're talking Coach Prime, that is Deion Sanders, Prime Time, the new head coach of Jackson State University. As we join you, I have one question that I want to get to, and then I'm going to get right to AD to get into his points. In regards to Lonnie, he said, great, but how will Deion fit into the small media market in Jackson, Mississippi and brand the market the way he does, or is that insignificant? No, it is not insignificant. You're absolutely right. What you will see is what we just seen. He will turn in, just like we talked about teams, he will increase the media presence and market of Jackson State immediately. That's what iconic brands or institutions do to a city. Yeah. That's why people get so excited. And AD Drew had a chance to talk to some local mayors in regards to those mayors that are connected with HBCU institutions. And they were bringing this, how they talk about bringing in events or bringing in companies. That's why you see cities talking about bringing in these companies and different events, because they transcend the market, right? So what you'll find out is because Prime has a national, and I would say a global market, what you will find out, those global markets, those national markets will transcend onto Jackson, Mississippi and cover it. There were people that came out from Jackson that came in to cover this event. That will not stop. It may not be as many, but you will see people come in. And depending on the success and how fast it is, the more that you will see. This will have a ripple effect in terms of growing the marketplace in and of itself, because that's what a brand does. And a brand, we're looking at this in cases a brand is individual, but you need to understand about brand identification, brand association, right? Brand identity, all those little things that we talk about. Brand is not just an individual. It is something that's beyond that. In fact, a brand is what you think about when you are not thinking about it. It's not an emblem, it's not a sign, it's not a name, it's not a logo. It is what you think about when you are not thinking about it, right? It is conceptually what you believe it is. He'll transform that. With that, AD, I wanted to get you in here and a little bit and talk about some of the things that we talked about in the show. What are your concepts and what comes to mind as you were seeing all this take place?
First of all, thank you, fellas, for letting me join you. You mentioned the media market for Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi is the 95th largest media market out of 212 media markets that are defined by the Nielsen rating. So Jackson, top 100 media market. It may be small in size, but Prime is going to get his money's worth out of those 284,000 homes in that market. And hey, just want to put it out there.
No, that's right. You're right. He will get. You said it exactly.
He's gonna get it, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna pick up some of the media market in places like Starkville, Birmingham, Oxford, Mississippi, even up into into Memphis. So he's in a good area with that. But getting back to yesterday's press conference, fellas, Did y'all think y'all was at church for a minute with Reverend Prime? I mean, Coach Prime up there talking. I mean,
Very much
I
so.
think he.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
Very
he
said
much
took some
so.
of.
amen. I said
I know
amen
TD
several
Jakes
times.
is one of his spiritual advisors, and I think he took some of
Yeah.
what TD Jakes must have been talking about
Hey,
on Sunday
AD,
and relayed it on Monday.
AD, you know how you sit up in the pew when the preacher get to something good? That was me
Yeah.
yesterday. I was like, okay, come on, Brian, come on, and you heard that. Come on, talk to us. You can hear it. So
The only thing was missing was him passing that plate around one extra time yesterday. But I'm pretty sure instead of that plate being passed around, you probably went to the Cash App and PayPal and everything else for Jackson State fundraising and saw some dollars put
it's coming.
into church that way.
It's coming.
into the building fund, as they like to say. But
There you go.
no, seriously though, talk about a coup in HBCU sports. I mean, first of all, if I'm Mississippi State, University of Mississippi, I'm scared.
Yep.
Those 4-star and possibly 5-star athletes that have been coming to University of Mississippi, Mississippi State, and even Alabama and LSU. You've got to be, I wouldn't say scared, but you've got to be concerned. You got to be aware, because now the one thing that Prime can say, and he said it on, I've seen so many Coach Prime interviews over the last couple of days. I can't tell you which interview I saw it on, but the one thing that he can sell them that you can't get at Mississippi State, Ole Miss, is culture, atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that he can sell that Jackson State has that you will not get at Ole Miss, that you will not get in Starkville, that you will not get at Southern Miss. You know, right now, and sorry, Charles, I got to say this. Jackson State is probably the number 5 school in the state when you think about football schools. You got the 2 big boys, Mississippi State, University of Mississippi. You've got Southern Miss, you've got Alcorn, and Jackson State. I would say they're number 5 because they haven't been winning lately. Although Jackson State has the tradition over Alcorn.
AD,
I think that's
I
a
will
great
say
question.
this.
I wanted Charles to answer that because I was going to ask that question in a way where you can get to that point, AD, because I think that's important contextually. I want to frame this. You got to think about the history of Mississippi, and I want you to talk about it a little bit and how that could be uniquely different than your time now that you spend in Texas in regards to the Texas schools and HBCUs, similar to the Louisiana, Florida, obviously Alabama. There's a different framing of Mississippi. Remember, this is a state, while we all live in the South and we kind of have this in our back of our heads, Mississippi, to some degree Alabama, but Mississippi is Mississippi. Let's not forget this. Remember, Mississippi just took down the Confederate flag in terms of their state flag. And there's people in Mississippi that feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So speak about that, Charles, how that creates a different mix in terms of those Power 5 schools in Mississippi versus Alabama, Louisiana, LSU.
Well, I will say this: it is a very unique dynamic in the state of Mississippi. The Jackson State fan is a Jackson State fan. He does not share that sort of fan reverence with the other flagship schools in the state. You very well can be in the state of Louisiana. You might be a Southern fan, but LSU is somewhere, floating, walking around in your thoughts. Same thing in Alabama, whereas you might have gone to Alabama State, but, you declare Alabama or Auburn. In Mississippi, the Jackson State fan is a Jackson State fan. He doesn't share that with Mississippi State, with the University of Mississippi. The Alcorn fan is an Alcorn fan. Doesn't share that with USM, share that with Mississippi State, share that with University of Mississippi. Same thing with Mississippi Valley State fan. So there's a unique framework within the state of Mississippi. AD, to your point, not only does Jackson State have to compete with USM, University of Mississippi, or Mississippi State, but there are, at any point in time, 4 to 5 nationally ranked junior colleges in Mississippi. So that's another sort of unique something that's going on within the state. And we have to keep in mind, the state is not that populous. And to still have all that talent to go around to various teams within the state. Recruiting is a dog eat dog sort of something in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
you
was gonna
take
bring
that
up
out.
that.
You take that out from the standpoint, AD, and I come right back to you to bring that up, and then I want Mike to get in here as well. You add that up, and then we're going to bring in Isaiah shortly, because I want to get a student's perspective of what this takes place, because I like to look at the different generational frameworks of how people think about this, because that's the part that I'm trying to stir up in this lab for us to understand that we need to see this broader in the different sectionalities, if you would, right? Because it's become an intersectionality of how they merge with each other. But we need to look at these in the market segmentations, because they're each different of how people are going to feel about it. And it's going to be the big pie that determines what this really looks like when it all comes together. We tend to get very linear in our lenses of how we see the world. And if we really want to analyze this, we need to start taking it apart, to stretch it, to take the deep dives to see what is taking place here. So Mississippi is a school, because of the pain that has happened there. While you had a Power 5 and they get some kids and they're getting more lately, and a lot of that is because purposely. You got to remember, it wasn't so long ago that they still flew the rebel flag in that state, in the stands. So players were leaving. They were going to Alabama, Auburn, right, going to LSU. They weren't necessarily staying there. So some people do want to stay at home. But the brand of Jackson wasn't able to keep up in terms of the monetary. Now you have an equalizer in there. You throw that in the mix. How did that start changing that framework? So we'll bring Isaiah on shortly. Let's bring him in here if we can get him in here, because I want to get his thoughts. But while we're waiting on Isaiah to join, we have about 5 minutes before we get to the top of the hour, and we can close out on 12:30 a.m. KCOH with Ralph Cooper, the Hall of Famer. But we'll stick around and come back to add on to this conversation, and we'll take it on a little bit. So if we can get Isaiah in here, we'll do that. While we're waiting on him, we'll get Mike to chime back in, and then we'll throw it back to AD and Charles for some more mix. Because the next question I want you all to look at is how do you think college football has changed since he's played, right? So, Mike, if you can dive in that for a moment, get your thoughts on that, and then we'll take it around the horn and kind of see, because I'm getting at something when I talk about that. I want you all to really understand that. How has college changed? And we may not have to take it back to when he played college football, but when he got out of football, how has the atmosphere of football as a sport, how has it changed? And what does that mean to the sport now, specifically looking at the changing that we've seen so much erupting around us with COVID-19, the expansion of SWAC into Florida with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman? How has it changed, and how will that affect what you think the first couple of things will go on with Coach Prime? So go ahead and take that away, Mike, and then we'll get Isaiah in here, hopefully quickly before the top. And then we'll take the top of the hour break and bring it back to everybody to chime in. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so real quick, I would just say, just kind of keeping the time in, is that everyone gets excited about the 5-star, and they want immediate response. Can he get the 5 stars? He will get a good portion of the 3 stars, or the 4 stars. Let's not forget the JUCO. Mississippi is very rich in a lot of JUCO players. So I don't know if you're calling them 3 stars or 4 stars. And I think the dynamic of the universities in Mississippi, maybe CB can allude to this, has automatically taken a step change. Whereas before the announcement, you could say Jackson State was 5th. I think they moved up to 3rd or 4th, just based on that announcement, just based on value. I think it changed a lot of minds of college, of high school students getting ready to make that decision. I think it changed a lot of minds. You think about somebody who can really come into the homes and talk to your parents. That's changed a lot of minds. So that's my basis for saying it's changed the overall dynamic. So I know we're up against the hour, so I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Doc.
Yeah, no, that was perfect, Mike. We'll dig a little deeper and we'll get the other thoughts from everybody else. But let's go to our intern. I want to get a student perspective. We don't always get the voice of the student, and this is someone more closer to that age, and he's going to give you some context of what that is looking like and the people that he's talking to. Because he's on Twitter, he's on social media, Instagram, he's on this, but he's talking to a different group of people and a different clientele. So I want to give you a perspective of somebody younger. What did they see with this? So in about 2 minutes, give us your thoughts, and then we'll come back if you need more time. But give us 2 minutes on your thoughts of what you've seen with all of this, Isaiah, and what are you hearing? So we're not hearing Isaiah, so we'll see if we can get in that mix there, and we'll have Roy engineer work on that. But with that thought, let me go right back to Charles while he's working on that, testing that. And Isaiah, you can jump back in there at any time to test your mic to see if it's coming on, and we'll let you know if you hear it. But right now, we're not hearing you, so see what you can get there. You might want to take the mic out and see if you can do it just straight from your device with your sound and see what that does. In regards to that, Charles, well, we're right at the top. Let's do this as we work on that. We'll take a quick break, and we'll sign out at the top of the hour with the Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper on KCOH 1230 AM. This is Dr. Cavill inside the HBCU Sports Lab, bringing you back in regards to what's going on here. Continue to listen on. We'll get back. We have the exciting news from Isaiah Thornton that's going to give us an insight from a younger's perspective. We're all old in this game, and we are told asunder by our thoughts, and sometimes
yourself old now.
And that, yeah,
Talk.
nice.
Speak for yourself, Doc. Speak for yourself.
Exactly. So I want to tune out and pass it back to Roy as we say thank you to our cohorts over there at KCOH 1230 AM with Ralph Cooper, the Hall of Famer. That is the Texas Hall of Fame, Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper. Thank you for your time. We'll take this quick break, and we'll be right back. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We have our guest, A.D. Drew from BCSN Sports Rap. He's a co-host of that show right there. We have Isaiah Thornton, our intern, Texas Southern University student, a graduating senior, giving us his thoughts of what he saw transpire. He's a big HBCU fan, but he's connected with this younger generation right around the age of those that Dion would be talking to in terms of recruit. So I wanted to see and hear what he was hearing in his space with the young people out there in regards to this hire. What are you hearing, Isaiah? Oh man, I so hate we missing that. We not getting that. That's the realness there. So
check your mute button, Isaiah. Make sure you're not muted. Make sure your mic's on the device.
And see what you can get with your device. With that, let's go to A.D. Drew in terms of that as we're working with Isaiah to reconnect itself. Just log out, Isaiah, and try to come back in to see if you can get it straight, and we'll work on that. With that, A.D., as we get in those connections, I know, what are your thoughts in regards to the financial side of this? What do you think? Because you have the juxtaposition where, like I said, that you have a coaching background first, right? That people may not realize. So you had a real live experience of getting out there and beating those bushes for kids. You get the answer of what are they telling you in your ear, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. How many of those folks would like to go, but then, there's some concerns because what they're hearing are the negative recruiting, those kind of things, right? So get in that a little bit, and then we'll get into the financial numbers on the other side of it. But talk about what are your thoughts in terms of hitting the trails from a coaching perspective, AD, of how this changed the game because of the brand associated with Coach Prime.
I happened to, when I was coaching, work for a former NBA player, Leon Douglas, at Tuskegee University. And let's be real, when I went and talked to recruits, talked to either the player, the parent, whatever. If Coach Douglas wasn't with me, hey, no shame to my game. I use that as one of our selling points. Look, you've got a guy who played in the NBA for 8 years. He played overseas for 12 years, and now he's here at this Division II HBCU university, trying to give back and trying to teach your kids something. And if your kid has the type of skill or opportunity where he could possibly go and play overseas or play some type of professional ball, this is the man who can help take them to that next level. It's a big selling point. Now, Dion has said he has a coaching staff that has 84 years of either playing or coaching experience in the NFL. Hey, we selling that. I'm sorry, there's no other HBCU that can sell that.
Right.
To my knowledge. Not only that, but keep this in mind. He is a NFL Hall of Famer. And I looked today and I really tried to find something. I cannot recall an NFL Hall of Famer coming back to coach at the college level. I found less than 10 examples of an NFL Hall of Famer who actually coached at the professional level. And I went through the Hall of Fame list and tried to find if they had coached at Division I, Power 5, whatever. I have not come across an NFL Hall of Famer who has coached as a head coach at the college level. What?
Great research. That's why we
Look,
brought AD in. You're not gonna get that anywhere else except for Inside the HBCU
Fam
Sports
can't sell
Lab.
that.
That's
Southern
what we
can't
bring
sell
you.
that.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's perfect.
You're right.
I mean,
very few can sell that.
That's why we break it in. With that that analysis, let me go back to you, Mike, in regards to that. As we're working on Isaiah, I think we have him about ready to come on. He's worked out the audio because I do want to get that nugget for everybody. We got a little time. With that, Mike, I want you to talk a little bit about the financial numbers. What do you think this move means in terms of off the field? What are the expectations that Jackson State, and I think there's some subsidiary, because everybody else is going to seek to reach that level too, and you're going to see other schools making even more commitment to try to offset what they believe is happening in Jackson. But talk a little bit about that, what people can expect in terms of how this is going to increase what I call the arms race, even within the SWAC, good or bad. How is this going to increase that? No matter what his financial head coaching numbers were, we know at the top, one of the top paid coaches at Texas Southern University is $300,000. So even if it's in that range, right, coming back from where they were at $200,000, increase there. But I'm talking about the commitments now from people saying, I want to be a part of this and funding money into the athletic department, funding money into the institution. And I'm not just talking about fans. I'm talking about corporate people that want to be tied to the brand associated with Coach Prime, as I tell you, that want to be that of that nature. What are your thoughts in terms of what that looks like, Mike?
I look at it from, and let me give my example, a corporate perspective. Let's say a corporate organization goes out and they make a major acquisition. Their stock is X dollars, okay? They make this major acquisition. It gets all kinds of media attention. Their stock price immediately goes up. What else happens? Now you have investors wanting to buy that stock, and what does that do? It drives the price and the value up even further. So, in essence, you have an iconic brand in JSU, which has made a major acquisition. And there's a monetary value that JSU has as an iconic historic brand. Now you bring another iconic brand for different reasons, and you now have the supplementary cohesion of these two brands together in a major, really, and I'm using corporate terms, major merger in a market known as the HBCU diaspora. What's that stock price going? If you would have bought SWAC stock, a year ago, guess what? It's increased in order of magnitude with the acquisition of FAMU, with the acquisition of Bethune, and now you have an iconic brand known as Dion, part of one of the major institutions. So you look at the stock of not only the SWAC but Jackson State, it's gone up at least 2 orders of a magnitude. And I could go back to my MBA stuff, but now you are attracting non-traditional investors to that market. It's I think AD said it. I think CB said it. Now you got mayors looking. Now you got local other businesses looking at how can I be a part of this growing corporate institution whose stock is already risen and is projected to rise even further. If you look at the 5-year, 10-year projection with Dion there, I don't know how long he'll be there. We don't know. We'll get into the X's and O's. But if you look at it from a pure acquisition, corporate acquisition, and financial basis, look at the valuation of Jackson State now. And now you're going to create. You heard Doc talk about the arms race. It's only fortuitous that FAMU is now has $10 million for its stadium. You're going to have other institutions now looking, how can we match that in some way, form, or fashion? How can we match that? How can we become a draw? And that just means an upward increase in financial resources drawn to that university. So that's how I look at it from a without getting too deep into the exact dollars and cents. So this is a great business project.
It sounds like a bunch of schools got to get on their hustle.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about it. This is transformational. I'm telling you, people understand. And even on our research side, this is going to drive researchers, those that study athletics in general, but specifically like myself, the cohort that I look at in terms of driving research. My fascinating in terms of a thesis or a dissertation is the case study that we see at Jackson State and the SWAC. These are case studies in themselves that people could do, and you literally could make a career in terms of your research just on this alone. Even if it's simple as a 4-year project, and we know it's going to be probably more extensive in terms of nothing else, the expansion of FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. But back to this, why we brought Isaiah in, and we'll come back to Charles for his thoughts, and then AD in terms of that framework of studying this analysis. I want to go into a perspective that you hadn't heard. You hadn't heard this perspective out there yet. From a student perspective, a young person's perspective. What are you hearing, Isaiah? What are you seeing, and what are your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me now? Okay. What I'm hearing is a lot of excitement from students. A lot of excitement. You got kids today who are just, oh, Deion Sanders is going to JSU? I want to play for him. Then you got the other kids, well, if he's coaching the DBs and I'm a wide receiver, I want to beat your DBs. So now it's making a whole new competitive way for some of these kids. Because some of these kids just want to say, I scored a touchdown on Deion Sanders' team, or we beat Deion Sanders' team. Then you've had the students, they're talking about, I've seen all Corn State memes, Grambling memes with different head coaches saying, I don't care who JSU hired. We're going to be about 40, 50, 60. So it's a whole community of people, who are understanding the school spirit side. It's bringing back school spirit. It's bringing back a lot of people enjoyment. And it's a great hire. It's a great hire. I know 2 years ago I said he probably isn't ready, but now looking at the climate that we're in, it was a good hire.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. And again, I mean, you can't take this away. I mean, we have our own personal views. We study it. We're fans. We dissect it. But I wanted to give you a perspective from a student that is younger and letting you know what young people are saying. Now, obviously, it's one person, but he's also telling you what he's reading on social media in there. And these things can change, but it gives you at least a compartmentalized approach, an individual case analysis, right? As we talk about in doing these, right? From an interviewing perspective of what does that look like. So I wanted to give you that type of perspective shortly from that. Going back to you, Charles, in regards to that, after you heard some of this analysis now, what does this do from your own inside? Because you were looking at one perspective. Now you're starting to hear folks from the outside. How does that change your framing of what you're hearing from a media perspective that you may have not thought before? And then go back to AD Drew. I want to ask some more business perspective of him, because people don't realize that he's in the marketplace where he looks, as I said, when we talked about these interviews, I'm going to give you some more context from a business perspective wise what this looks like. But going to you, Charles, your thoughts.
Well, I think it's something that I've said for quite some time, even from a media perspective. It's such a paradigm shift. And when you have paradigm shifts, there is it's going to be a lot of people uncomfortable, to be very honest with you. Well, anytime you have a paradigm shift. So I jokingly say I've had no less than 200 calls or texts or in terms of why this is bad and why this is not going to work. And we kind of had a joke, of course, on the Jackson State podcast that I do, the Tiger Talk with 1400 Club, where we talked about the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Nice plug.
Yeah, exactly.
Shameless
plug. I know, shameless plug. You got me. But
hey,
you know,
I'm going to too now. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna get my shameless plug in.
They want to hear the insight that they think they can't get nowhere else. So take that plug. Take that plug. Your numbers are going up
take
too.
it.
As we just talked about that acquisition, that's another example what Mike was alluding to.
Right.
It helps everybody in regards to what it is. Because everybody wants a piece of this. They want to know. They want their answers. I still got people that's been refuted. Is it true that these coaches are coming? That's the interest level. Whether it's true or not is craziness. But welcome to big time football in regards to what does the interest and craze, and people want this. Now people are on tune saying, I need to know. I want to know why this is taking place. How is this going to affect me? What this is going to do to my team? How can I get a piece of this? I want in somehow, some way. That is strategic and important. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, we might get to a point where we look at September 21st, 2020 as not just a paradigm shift for Jackson State, but a paradigm shift for HBCU football in general. And I think that's huge. And that fact is not lost on me, what a hire like this does for the profile of the HBCU community. And for a lot of us, it's going to be uncomfortable because we're going to figure out and we're going to try to kind of take all sorts of jabs as to why this is bad. And to be honest with you right now, this is, to me, a very good thing in terms of my passion and my love for HBCU football and the HBCU diaspora as a whole.
No question. Going back to you, AD Drew, in regards to that, come in here and tell us some more about those facts and figures, because you'd like to bring in that data in terms of what are some other measurable ways of how we should be looking at this that we're probably not thinking about, right? And do this in such a way to tease these folks, because they need to come back on Thursday and check us out in terms of this group setting, because we're going to take a deeper dive into the backstory that not a lot of people are telling. You know, a lot of people on the front edge emotionally talking about this, but we're going to give you that mix in the lab, that mix in the sports rap in regards to breaking down of section by section of different ways that you need to consider this. And we'll get into some big and bad and all that, because there is a space for that. But I want people to broaden the framework of how they come to understand these moves of what is taking place slowly but surely in and out of HBCU sports at this time. Your thoughts, AD?
First of all, thank you for doing my shameless plug for me, so it's not shameless if the host does it. No, but seriously, first I want to follow back up on the last question before I close this out.
Sure.
Before we close out and move on. If I'm an Alabama State, I've got to sell my current facility now. If I'm Prairie View, I've got to sell my current facility, especially to a junior college player, because we know Jackson State has some issues with their facility. They've got plans to upgrade those facilities, but let's be realistic. That's 2-3 years down the line. And you know, am I going to waste 2 or 3 years of my potential career waiting on the improvements that that Jackson State has on the table. And I know, don't look at me like that, Charles. You know, y'all got some plans in the works. But today, if I want to go to a place today that has the facilities, I'm going to consider Prairie View. I'm going to consider an Alabama State. You know, that's the only thing I would have to recruit against you right now, because you got everything else.
And a 60,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, but 60,000 where it's half empty with 30, or do I want the
Hey,
full 20 where it all looks good?
Jackson
I'm
State
just telling you
fans
what
do
I
their
would be
part,
selling
you know.
that's what I'm selling on the
No,
couch
I
at Big
think
Mama house.
that is important in the
That's
context,
a good point.
because that's getting in seriously though, because you have the bright light side and you have the negative side. That's what coaches. That's what gonna say. It's like, yeah, they got this, and you gonna be talking about 30,000 fans, upwards to 60. They gonna be like, yeah, but it's half empty. Come to here, we got a
Yeah, but
pack. You can feel it. You see what I'm saying? We got a
I
new
can't do
weight
nothing with
room.
the
It's
business
gonna say
side.
it's coming.
And,
So those are
no
the
offense,
fights that are gonna be there for the real.
the
I think that's
Sonic Boom
interesting.
is good, but so is every other band in the SWAC. So you can't use the band
Whoa!
as a separator. Let's be real. Sonic Boom is good,
Whoa!
but all bands in the SWAC are good. Real talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Every band in the
I'll
SWAC
give you that.
can hold its
All
own.
bands in the SWAC are good. All bands in the
Yeah.
SWAC are good, but
That's why
there are
you can't
some.
use the boom as that separator.
There
Yeah,
are
but I
some.
think
Let,
that's
Coming in. But anyway,
I think
let's clarify
I
that
think
statement.
there's
That
important. I
all
want to
okay,
get to
I
Mike. And
agree.
there's a context in there that you want to look at in regards to that, because there's one thing in terms of your your fandom in talking about how you want to separate these things. There's also a difference in regards to if you're a band head and you're moving there. But again, your fan favors are actually regional as well. So you talk
yes.
about students that grow up in Texas. The two bands they look at, for the most part, are right there, the ones that they see. Now you have
Right.
some that may have family and travel more, so they start to open up, and so they may have allegiance to Grambling, or they may have a connection, allegiance to Southern, because they seen them come in, or Jackson. But how many times has the Jackson band actually came to Texas? Right? Because of
Oh,
the
that's true.
travel frame.
That's true.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So these
Mm-hmm.
fandoms over here see differently. Now in Mississippi, if you're talking about keeping a kid there, that's different. But that's why I said you really have to dissect and really start to break it down. I'm gonna go back to Isaiah because he's listened to it a little bit, and so he can give us another context in terms of what we just talked about. Then I go back to Mike to come in here and start to wrap it up. Give us some more thoughts in terms of what we've talked about, and relate that to what you're hearing in some other contexts from young people. How do they see that? How do they see the connection with the bands from different locations? You come out of East Texas, then coming in the big city of Houston, Texas Southern University. Again, relate to the social media platforms where these students travel, that space, and on campus. What are you hearing again in those spaces at this time related to what we just talked about, bands, athletics, and how all that is coming together?
I think it's building excitement. People are really excited about this. Just because like with COVID, it stopped this season. So it stopped the band. People were hoping HBCUs or the ones that were trying to play would still be able to play just to hear the band. Now they can't hear the band. So when you move to the spring or next fall, I think it's going to be a season that we won't forget. It's going to be packed. It's going to be live. The student section should be fuller, and that's just for every school, not just for certain schools. JSU, FAMU, Grambling, Southern, Texas Southern fans, Prairie View fans, Valley fans. So I just think it's gonna build up the excitement. Or yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
you know,
think about
Isaiah.
this. We haven't even really. I'm gonna come back to you right after this, Charles, because I gotta follow up because I want you to get into some specifics of what you can share, obviously, that people don't know out there that are important as we build on this context. But what I wanted to say is, think about this. We haven't even released the schedule for fall 2021. That's going to be another whammy when they release in terms of the talking points of what that looks like. So there's still waves of this that are going to come continue. You know that these things are going to continue to germinate, and you don't know what instantaneously, because we kind of seen on Twitter in terms of how they came together with Coach Simmons and Coach Prime. It's going to be interesting in terms of looking at the Labor Day weekend in Miami and all these different things, how that's going to come together. But if you could, Charles, what were you hearing in regards to some of these facility updates? What is the timetable, and what is that looking like in terms of what is already currently there that people may not realize because all they do is come to the stadium to see that? What have you seen transpire that you think may be significant in terms of the facility ramp up that is taking place at Jackson State University that most people may not be aware of?
Well, probably what I can say at this time is there are definitive blueprints in place for facility upgrades, definitively with the locker room at Jackson State, the training facilities. There is a lot of things in terms of blueprints that are coming to fruition, and it's hard for me to kind of get into more specifics or in regards to that, but I think that the upgrades are in the pipeline. So it's hard to get go further beyond
fair,
that.
because you don't want to oversell in regards to what's
right.
there. But I can promise you this: when they're looking at recruits, the recruits gonna see them blueprints, and at some point they'll get out.
Definitively
and
see the
so
blueprints.
you don't have to have the details of anybody else. We're not talking about people giving away their trade secrets. I don't have a problem with that, and I want people to be able to stay true to what information they get that they can't share. We get that all the time in regards to that. For example, we knew about this 3 to 4 weeks ago, but we were asked from a business consulting side, because we don't just drive media. I want people to understand that. That's why we talk about. We look at these in terms of consulting relationships, in terms of how we develop the news. So we couldn't release it. We drop hints and dimes, and people will hopefully start to understand when we drop things in certain ways, they can read the tea leaves by what we're saying. This is coming. Because we happen to have a relationship to have that news, but we're not in the business to break news. That's not what we do. We analyze what takes place. And so I want you to understand, when you talk about coming to the lab in the mix, that's what you're getting here. As we start to come up, we got about 5 minutes left in regards to that. And so if we go into this little rapid fire type question, that I love to see when AD does this in a lot of ways. How long do you say Deion will be in Jackson, Mississippi? Go with you. We'll go with the youngest baby face on here, Isaiah. How long do you see him being at Mississippi?
I think it's a 5-year marriage. 5 years.
Certainly. What are your thoughts on that? Mike, how long do you think this will last?
Initially, I'm going in 3 to 5 years.
Let's go to our guest, AD Drew. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to put an asterisk with mine. As long as Florida State is good, Deion will be at Jackson State. Soon as Florida State starts losing, and if Deion has success at Jackson State,
that is
they're
not
coming
an
after.
Answer. That is not an answer. That is not an answer.
Charles, you need to become a Florida State fan and hope they win.
Hey, you know what?
Not an answer.
I'm not going to even put
4 years. 4 years if you want to put a quantified.
Thank you.
Dr. Cavill, you mentioned something about Deion in terms of being a perfectionist, and I see him being at Jackson State until he attains a level of success where he can say job well done. So whatever time period that is, that's what that time period might be.
CB, that is not an answer. That is not an answer.
Man, these non-committal type.
Come on. He didn't ask for that. I could have gave that.
Over and under. Somebody asked this question: was Deion going to coach in the spring? My answer to that is yes. He has 8 games on the schedule as of now. Obviously, there's still COVID-19. There's thoughts they're going to play. I think they certainly going to try to play with the direction you see going with basketball coming up, and we'll start getting into some basketball talk. But let's say they're able to play all 8 games. Over under that he gets to above 500, so 8 games, that would be 5 wins. Over under, I'm going to say 5 wins. Do you take it or do you not? We'll start with the resident fan. We're going to go with Jackson State. Over and under. You take that? 5 wins?
I'll take 5 wins.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll take the
Let's
over.
go to Isaiah. Over or under?
Well, he starts off with badly. I'll take over. Yeah. 6 wins.
Man,
I'll give him 6.
Over 5. You talking about he gonna be in the race for the division, Mike?
I'll give him 5.
Interesting. AD?
I'll give him 5.
I'm gonna be on the island by myself. I'm going with the under.
We had another one. 4-star recruits. He will land 5 4-star or 5-star recruits. Charles, over or under?
Wait, that's for 21. You talking about coming up next year?
Yeah,
next fall 21.
Next season. Yeah, 2021. Okay. Full year.
I would say Coach Prime is the modern day Big John Merritt. I go with the definitely yes, the over.
Wow, nice. Let me go to Drew now. Drew, over under. 4.
What's our number?
4. 4 that he will land 4 or 5 stars players.
4 at 4 and above. I'm gonna take the over on that one.
Nice. Let's go with Isaiah. Over under 4 or 5-star players. Willie Landon.
Over. I think he did it this spring.
This is interesting. Oh, he put a nugget. He get it this spring. Mike Washington, what are you saying?
Yeah, I'll take the over.
Ooh, boy, you talking about changing some dynamics. He finds a way to land 4 or 5, more of the 4 or 5 stars, even if he gets 2 or 3. But you talking about 4? Wow, that's amazing. So we just wanted to give you a little different perspective here on Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Hopefully you've been entertained for the show. You've seen it a little differently today in regards to giving you a different perspective of what has taken place and literally has changed the landscape in Jackson, Mississippi, none other than Jackson State University, as they say down there. I love 1877. They have landed the star of the offseason, if you would. I say star, I mean prime time.
Like the visual. Here you go, Isaiah. Here you go, Isaiah. Here you go.
They have done none other than Deion Sanders, coach prime, other than prime time, Deion Sanders. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, the Dean of HBCU College of Sports, with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop. As we come to a close, we hope you enjoyed it. Our dialogue as we brought in our special guest, our student intern Isaiah Thornton, as you see him holding up his mask and representing for none other than Texas Southern University. And we bring on our special guest as well, A.D. Drew, co-host of BCSN Sports Rap. Again, check us out for our special edition of joint venture between Dr. Ville's Inside HBCU Sports Lab and BCSN Sports Rap with Brian and AD. We'll tape it yesterday, so you'll get a nice mix. It'll be up on Thursday. So we're going to give you a lot of information throughout this week. Check us out. Keep supporting us. Make sure you hit the like, hit the share. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Dr. Kenyatta Cavill. That's DrKenyattaCavil. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Follow us on Inside HBCU Sports Lab 1. That is Twitter. You can follow us on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Share it with your friends and tell them to go check it out on YouTube. Let's get our numbers up on YouTube. We want to start stacking the deck over there. As you know, dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Course.
Lecture dismissed.
What? RT Production.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And